Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for joining this meeting of the Santa Rosa Plain Groundwater Sustainability Agency Community Meeting Rate and Fee Study Update. My name is Sam McGill. I'm a facilitator with Sacramento State University. I'm assisting the GSA with facilitation of this community meeting, as well as a number of the other GSA activities, including the Santa Rosa Plain Advisory Committee. Before we do a quick review of the agenda, I just wanted to talk briefly about the webinar protocols that we'll use for the day. Just like to point out that all users are going to be muted. We're expecting a very large number of participants today, above 200, I believe, at last count. So we're going to be utilizing the Q&A function to receive your input. In order to access that, I ask that you ask a question. You can then enter your question into the Q&A box and tap send. We'll use the Q&A as the primary means for your feedback today. At each one of the presentation breaks, we're going to kind of group common questions for staff to answer. They'll answer them verbally, but I do want to make sure everyone's aware that all of the questions that you submit will be preserved and included in a meeting summary after the workshop is concluded. So with that, I'll quickly review the purpose of the meeting and the agenda, and then turn it over to the Santa Rosa Plain GSA Chair for introductory remarks. We're here today really to do two things. The first thing we want to do is introduce the Santa Rosa Plain Groundwater Sustainability Plan and receive feedback on the rate and fee study options. In just a moment, I'll hand it over to GSA Chair Tom Schwedhelm to provide some welcome and background, and then we'll really dive into those two items that I just mentioned. Mark Estrada, Sonoma Water Principal Hydrologist, is on hand to provide some background on groundwater basin conditions, groundwater projects, and a budget for the GSA moving forward. And then the rest of the meeting will be spent on a rate and fee study update and next steps. Jerry Bradshaw from SCI Consulting is on hand to provide that information. And between each one of those presentations, as I mentioned, staff will answer the questions that you submit via the Q&A function. And then at the very end of the meeting, Chair Schwedhelm will provide some closing remarks. It's our goal to get you out of here at by 7:30 p.m. Really appreciate all of you joining today and look forward to the discussion and receiving your input. If at any time you have any difficulty accessing Q&A, you're welcome to type into the chat or Q&A that you're having trouble hearing, and we will make sure that staff provides whatever assistance they can to get you back online and answer your questions as quickly as possible. With that, I'd like to turn it over to the Santa Rosa Plain GSA Chair, Tom Schwedhelm, for opening remarks and some background information. Tom?
Great, thank you so much, Sam. And I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. I want to put kind of what today's meeting is into context. So we're here tonight to protect our groundwater basin as we face ongoing droughts and climate change. In previous meetings, I've heard some members of the community saying this is just another bureaucratic attempt to expand government. But really, one of the brilliant things that the state of California did do in 2014 was to pass what we call the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, which you will hear as being referred to as SGMA. This is something that the state did, and then the local jurisdictions had the opportunity to allow the state to tell us how they're going to run this organization, or we could do it locally. And we here in Sonoma County believed we could do a much better job than the state of California. So if we could go to the next slide. So groundwater is a critical water source for Santa Rosa and the other cities in the Santa Rosa Plain. Groundwater is the only drinking water source for thousands of people. We don't want this groundwater basin to look like the Central Valley. As this photo shows, because of overpumping of groundwater, the land surface in the San Joaquin Valley actually subsided or sunk in some parts by more than 6 feet between 1988 and 2016. Wells have gone dry, and today entire communities depend on water being trucked in because their community water wells no longer function. These kinds of problems with groundwater basins statewide led to the passage of the aforementioned Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, or SGMA, in 2014. And again, this is a statewide framework to help protect groundwater resources over the long term, which I think we all can agree is what is needed. Next slide, please. In Sonoma County, the state determined that 3 groundwater basins must comply with SGMA: the Petaluma Valley, the Sonoma Valley, and the Santa Rosa Plain. In essence, SGMA requires that we locally manage the basin, which is shown in this map. The area that is managed by the GSA is outlined in the dotted blue line and is shown in the light gray. You can go to the GSA website to determine if you're in a basin. Local management means identifying, monitoring, and fixing existing groundwater problems that are caused by pumping of groundwater and preventing future problems. We go to the next slide, please. As required by SGMA, the Santa Rosa Plain Groundwater Sustainability Agency was created in 2017. The county, cities, towns, and special districts have supported the GSA for the first 5 years, though either contributions or with a fee that was approved in 2019. In total, local agencies have paid more than $2 million to support the GSA. This has been matched by state grants and technical assistance of about $2.2 million. This funding has paid for a groundwater sustainability plan and allowed us to operate the new groundwater agency and to hold more than 50 board and advisory committee meetings and several workshops and community meetings, all of which have been open to the public. Next slide, please. Tonight, we'll discuss the existing fee and options for modifying it. We know that's why most of you are here, and we don't want to keep you in suspense. So I'll share the information where we are. The current fee is $19.90 per acre foot of groundwater pumped annually. We'll talk a little bit later about what an acre foot is, but for people with one house on their property who use a well for their home, garden, and landscaping, the current fee would be $9.95. However, since 2019, when the fee was adopted by the Groundwater Sustainability Agency Board and the county and Sonoma Water have contributed funds to the GSA so that rural landowners, agriculture, businesses, and mutual water districts haven't had to pay the fee. The municipal pumpers, which include the cities and the town of Windsor, have paid the fee based on the amount of groundwater pumped. As you will hear from the next 2 speakers, the current fee doesn't raise enough revenues to cover the cost of implementing a recently adopted groundwater plan. So the new fee level that is under consideration is equivalent to between $35 and $50 an acre foot. For rural residents, that would equate to $18 to $25 per parcel annually. Again, our fee consultant will get into the details, including how the fee is calculated. But we wanted to let you know the number right off the bat to help alleviate some concerns. I look forward to your questions and comments and want to assure you that the GSA board will be discussing your feedback at our next meeting as we develop the fee. Our facilitator, Sam, will introduce our next speaker. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you, Chair Schwedhelm. At this point, I'd like to introduce Marcus Trotta. Marcus is the principal hydrologist for Sonoma Water and has been working with the GSA since they were created. He's also the primary author of the Groundwater Sustainability Plan required by SGMA for the Santa Rosa Plain. Marcus, we'll go ahead and hand it over to you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Sam, and thank you everybody for joining us in this for this important meeting. So the information that I'll be sharing tonight at a very high level is really supplied in detail in the Groundwater Sustainability Plan that Chair Schwedhelm referred to, that can be found online. You can read each section in the plan online on the GSA's website. And the plan was developed over several years and included feedback from the GSA board, the local community through a number of community meetings, as well as a stakeholder-based advisory committee, which included, it still includes representatives of rural well owners, agricultural interests, environmental interests, and others in those more than 50 public meetings that Chair Schwedhelm mentioned. Next slide, please. So Section 3 of that plan describes the status of 5 key sustainability indicators that the state requires that these groundwater sustainability agencies assess. And Section 4 sets thresholds and objectives for each of those 5 key sustainability indicators that are that are in the plan. And that's also a requirement from the state related to this Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. So I'm going to go through each of those 5 sustainability indicators and just give you a really high level synopsis of some of the key findings associated with each of them. So starting here with groundwater quality, and groundwater quality is measured in the plan by looking at 3 different constituents of concern that are either naturally occurring or the result of human activity. And these include arsenic, nitrates, and salts. Groundwater quality is highly variable throughout the basin. We have very highly complex and variable geologic conditions that contribute to that, but it is generally acceptable for most beneficial uses, human use, for animals, agricultural, livestock, and the environment. So while there are some areas that do have water quality challenges and problems, they are generally pretty localized and related to either historic land uses or local geologic conditions. And because water quality is regulated through many other state and local agencies, SGMA really only requires that the GSA does not cause additional water quality problems through their actions and projects in the plan. So the next sustainability indicator that I'll describe is land surface subsidence. So if you think of that picture that was shown in the Central Valley with the sinking land, that's something that is evaluated in the plan on kind of whether it's occurring, what the cause could be, and whether it's permanent or inelastic. Measurements that have been taken using GPS technology and satellite technology have not found evidence of inelastic land surface subsidence in the basin that's attributable to groundwater pumping. But all of these sustainability indicators are required to be monitored going forward. And the plan also includes a monitoring program and network for each of these sustainability indicators I'll be describing. Next slide, please. So like nearly every groundwater sustainability agency in the state, we have very limited data on the connection between surface water and groundwater within the basin, and how this connection supports and contributes to aquatic species, including endangered and threatened species within the basin, like coho salmon and steelhead. The plan recognizes that we need additional information about the connection between groundwater pumping that's under the jurisdiction of the agency and associated creek levels and streams in order to determine whether projects, programs, or possible restrictions are needed in order to reduce the possibility of detrimental impacts to surface water due to groundwater pumping. So this is going to be an important area of focus for the GSA, particularly over the next 5 years, to improve that information. And the plan includes a robust plan to develop better information on the connection between surface water and groundwater. And it's important to note that SGMA, the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, does provide for adaptive management, so we can make modifications and changes as we gather more information going forward. And we do have 20 years to maintain or achieve sustainability within the basin under the law. Next slide, please. So the next sustainability indicator I'll describe is the reduction of groundwater in storage. That's the amount of groundwater that's stored within the aquifers in the basin. And to estimate that in the plan, we've used a computer model of the basin that looks at groundwater coming into the basin from rainfall, recharge from the mountain fronts, and a variety of other sources. It also looks at the amount of groundwater discharging or leaving the groundwater basin from stream flow, groundwater pumping, and other sources. On average, in recent years, we've been running about a 2,100 acre-foot deficit on an annual basis. That's increased from historical estimates. It's important to note that 2,100 acre-foot value does incorporate the previous drought of 2014 to 2016. And during wet years, you do see increases in storage. But overall, long-term, we are seeing declines in storage. The last sustainability indicator I'll describe is the chronic lowering of groundwater levels. This is something that the GSA needs to avoid. And while groundwater levels throughout the basin have generally been stable recently, and we actually have seen some areas of increasing groundwater levels where there have been some historical reductions in groundwater pumping in some areas of the basin. The plan is also required to look out 50 years into the future and estimate and simulate the effects of climate change and future growth on groundwater levels and other sustainability indicators. And so when we do that, the computer model predicted that the deeper aquifer system in the basin is likely to decline in storage and groundwater levels. And without projects to replenish groundwater or actions to reduce pumping, deeper wells could potentially be impacted by these declines. And so the plan, section 4 of the plan, if you go to our website and take a look, it includes those thresholds and objectives that have been set for all of these sustainability indicators. And those were developed through both the technical process as well as input from the community to set levels that are protective of other well users, as well as sensitive environmental ecosystems within the basin. Next slide, please. So the plan in section 6 includes a number of projects and actions that could be implemented to achieve and maintain sustainability within the basin. And these start with some water use efficiency and alternative water source projects to reduce groundwater use particularly in the rural and unincorporated areas where existing conservation programs that have been utilized by many of the urban suppliers and have resulted in a 37% drop in per capita water use since 2009 have not been available to many of those users. So the idea is to develop a program to roll out some of those incentives out to groundwater users in all sectors. Next slide, please. So other projects include recharge type projects. So these would be projects that improve the supply of water within the basin. And on the top left there, that includes looking at aquifer storage and recovery. The concept for this is taking water from the Russian River in the wintertime when there's plenty available, and pumping it through Sonoma Water's collector wells where it's naturally filtered beneath the Russian River, and conveying it through our aqueduct to wells in the Santa Rosa Plain, where that water can be stored underground using either repurposed or new wells. So this concept is kind of like building a storage reservoir underground. And there has been a feasibility study that looked at the availability of water for diverting within the winter time, that found that there was, even during drier years, there is always some natural flow within the Russian River that could be utilized for recharging those groundwater basins. We also, Sonoma Water, in partnership with the city of Sonoma, also did a pilot study in that groundwater basin that found that the technology works in our local geologic setting. And lastly, Sonoma Water actually just received a state grant through the drought relief funding to implement an aquifer storage and recovery and get us a jump start on some of these projects and actions in the Santa Rosa Plain. So on the right there, another project is capturing local stormwater from within the basin, either holding it in detention basins or flooding or improving the permeability of farmlands where that water can recharge our local aquifers. Similar detention type areas throughout the county serve as ballparks, school playing fields and areas for grazing and hiking, and times of the year when those fields and those detention basins are not flooded. So they could be multi-benefit type of projects. The GSP also includes an activity to evaluate policy options that the GSA could consider adopting using their own authorities provided by the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, or recommending policy options for other agencies to consider that would benefit the groundwater basin. And some of those types of policy options that could be considered include review of discretionary review of well permits, coordination with growers in their farm plans to integrate activities that benefit sustainable groundwater management. And we've already been talking with growers about what that could look like, as well as well metering for non-rural residential groundwater pumpers, or the types of policy options that would be developed and brought to the GSA board for consideration in terms of applying management actions within the basin. Next slide, please. So in addition to the projects and management actions I just described, the Groundwater Sustainability Agency must comply with SGMA by monitoring changes in groundwater levels, all of those sustainability indicators that I went over. These are all described in section 5 of the Groundwater Sustainability Plan. We're required to work on closing the gaps we have in data and information to improve and continue refining the plan and model that we're using to project what could happen in the future. Because of the potential impact I mentioned on the groundwater pumping on streams and endangered species, we're also needing to coordinate with local, state, and federal resource management agents, as well as water quality agencies. And then there's also annual reporting that's required by this law, and a 5-year GSP update, which really gives you an opportunity to make any modifications based on new information that's collected as you go about your monitoring and information gathering. And then community engagement and outreach is also an important critical component of the GSA's work going forward. Next slide, please. So this slide is just intended to give you an introduction to the annual budget that's required to comply with SGMA and complete those tasks that I just described. As you'll see, the total comes to a little under 1.1 million when you average it out over a 5-year period. And Jerry Bradshaw, who'll be presenting next, will describe how that budget's been kind of smoothed out over that 5-year period. This budget also assumes that the Santa Rosa Plain Groundwater Sustainability Agency will be coordinating closely with the 2 other groundwater sustainability agencies in the county, in Sonoma Valley and Petaluma Valley, to jointly share the costs of studies, projects, outreach, and updates where that's possible. Let's see. So I think with that, I'm going to be turning it back over to Sam, and then happy to answer I'll try to answer any questions that come up.
Great, thank you, Marcus. A lot of questions coming and comments coming in via Q&A. I've done my best to summarize some of the most common questions that have been asked. And just a reminder, I posted it in the chat to everyone, but all of the comments and chats that are being submitted will be captured for the record. To start with, I saw a couple of questions about how the amount of water pumped or used be measured. So for individual well owners, what's the intention? How will water be measured?
Yeah, so I think Jerry will go over this in some detail during his presentation. But for groundwater, really the only existing groundwater users that are metering and reporting their data are primarily public water supply systems that are required to do that. For agricultural users, rural domestic users, and others that don't fall into that public water supply system requirement. What we've done for the GSP and what Jerry will show you what we're doing for the fee study is to estimate those groundwater uses on a, you know, kind of based on crop types and known or estimated applied water for different types of crops, and estimates of what a typical rural residential property would use for water. Going forward, the GSA, as I mentioned during those policy options, could consider requiring certain groundwater users that don't fall into what's known as a non-de minimis user, essentially rural residential users, to meter their wells. So that could be one way to improve their data sets. They could also look at doing voluntary metering to try and get you know, example type of estimates for different types of uses.
Great, thank you. Another common question that we saw: does the GSA have oversight for overwatering issues such as landscaping?
So the GSA does not have a direct oversight for those types of uses. They could, as I mentioned, for you know, for users that don't fall into that rural residential category, require metering, and through that they could potentially you know, look at you know, water usage at that scale, and they do have the authority to impose restrictions on water use should they choose to use those authorities.
Thank you. This may be covered in Jerry's presentation to some degree, but do the rates charged by various GSAs vary in other parts of the state?
Yes, I'd say each groundwater sustainability agency has its own unique basin, its own unique challenges, its own unique projects, and so the budgets for groundwater sustainability agencies vary quite a bit. We feel ours have been you know, somewhat in the middle of the road, but they do vary, and you know, all the groundwater sustainability agencies are looking at, you know, different options to raise revenue as well, and so there's a great variety in how these GSAs are being financed.
Thank you. And one other common question, let's see, would be whether the GSA will maintain people's wells and other groundwater infrastructure after a fee is implemented.
So the GSA is responsible for, you know, maintaining sustainability of the groundwater basin itself, you know, not individual wells. So the goal of the agency is to make sure that there's water available for your well to pump.
Great, thank you, Marcus. And let's see, another question. How does growth in the Santa Rosa Plain impact the GSP and the amount of fees charged? A number of users have pointed out that more building reduces the available water for current well owners. Yeah,
so as I mentioned, the law does require that the plan that was developed include projections for future growth. And so we did account for that in our water budget, and worked with you know, agricultural practitioners as well as experts in land use to project future increases in growth in the rural residential and changes in the agricultural sector. So but that's something that's one of those things that's going to be, you know, looked at as we go, and as we get more information on growth going forward, would be use to modify those projections in the future.
Great, thank you. Also note that a number of the questions are specific to the structure of the rate and fee study. Things along the lines of what will fees pay for, how will various businesses or entities be charged, and is there state support for GSA activities such as grants or drought resilience. Jerry's going to actually cover that in his some of that information in his presentation. So I'd like to hold off on those now. I would point out to people that staff is also answering questions that can be easily answered via text. If you click on the question and answer feature at the top of the page, you'll see an answered button. If you click on that, you'll see some of the answers that have been provided that way as well. Just one that I'll read out since it's been a very common question regarding water rights. What is your legal authority to charge for water? And as Sonoma Water staff pointed out, the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act does not change existing groundwater rights. Groundwater rights will continue to be subject to regulation under the California Constitution. And you can see in the answer the specific water code section that's listed there. But, and this is important, SGMA does require that groundwater, which is a common resource, be locally managed and does provide local GSAs the authority to charge for that sustainable management, which Marcus just alluded to. Just going to take one more scroll through the questions that have been submitted. I appreciate everyone's patience. There's a lot of very specific questions about the rate and fee study, and I think Jerry will cover most of those. I would just ask staff if there are other questions you're seeing that have kind of popped out to you. Feel free to take a quick look, and we'll pause for just a moment if there are additional ones you'd like to answer verbally. And I do apologize for my son crying in the background. Sorry, everybody. All right. Thank you, Marcus. Staff, continue to take a look at the questions and answers that are being submitted. Yes, I just see one question from Sonoma Water. Did we ask about growth? Yes, we did. We did discuss that. So at this point, I'd like to go ahead and transition to Jerry Bradshaw. Much of his presentation is going to cover specifics on the rate and fee study. So we'll go ahead and hand it over to Jerry. Thank you. And keep those questions and comments coming in the meantime.
Thank you, Sam. Appreciate that. So the rate and fee study is sort of the next step in the process here. We're going to talk about four basic things during this part of the presentation. We'll talk about some of the options for funding sources. We're going to talk about groundwater pumping data. I know there's been a lot of commentary on that in the Q&A. We're going to revisit the costs that Marcus just showed you a minute ago and look at a variation on that. And then we'll finish up with looking at some preliminary options and the rates associated with those to let you know how we came to the numbers we showed you at the beginning of the presentation. Next slide, please. On funding sources, we kind of break them into three basic groups. The first one is grants. If you can get money, grant money from the state, that relieves a lot of the budgetary pressure on the local agency. Grants typically come from the state, so therefore they're ultimately paid for by all taxpayers throughout the state through bond measures and so forth. That's the grants. The next category is what has been happening along with grants has been happening in the past 5 years, and that is the members of this agency pay for the work to be done here. That's been going on to some extent in about equal measure with the grants, and that's something we can look at going forward. But we've broken those into two categories: the water agencies and the cities and towns. For any amount they contribute to this agency, these costs would then be passed along to their water rate payers. So they do have a way to recover that, but it goes out to the same people to some extent. There's another group, the county and the two conservation districts don't have ratepayers. They don't have anybody to go to pass those costs along. They just have to absorb those costs in their budgets, and maybe at some point they have to cut back on other services to pay for this. So that would be a way that everyone in the basin might pay vicariously through that process. The last category are the beneficiaries, the direct beneficiaries of the groundwater. These are the people who pump water and directly use the groundwater on their property, in their businesses or their farm or their residences. We've broken that into two categories. The first one is the groundwater users that directly benefit from the groundwater coming up out of the ground through the pumps. And then we've also taken a look at a way to spread the costs along all water consumers in the basin. There's about 9,000 properties that have wells on them or directly rely on well water. There's about 80,000 properties in the basin at large. So the idea there, if there was a way to spread the costs across more properties, it would be a less cost. So we'll explore that as we get into the following slides. On the next slide, we'll talk about well owner metrics. The first chunk here is where we define the rate classes. If you would click forward, yes. Pardon me. We divided it into 5 rate categories. The first one is municipal and other public water service providers that pump water out of the ground. There's many of those. The next one is agriculture and other irrigation. And the third category is rural residential. And then finally, there's some commercial enterprises, obviously, out in the non-public water service areas. So all of those middle 3 categories are basically properties that lie outside of the city's water departments or the other public water service providers. The last category, urban wells, is an interesting thing. These are properties that lie within a water service area, a city or a water district, but they're known to have wells on the property. So we've actually included those as a potential source of pumped water, although it's a fairly small segment here. The next click shows us how we accumulate the data on this. So the municipal and other public systems, as Marcus mentioned, actually meter their pumps and then report the pumping quantities to the state. So we can go through the Department of Drinking Water and capture that data, and we have the data for all of those users. But everyone else out there who pumps groundwater is not required to report their pumping to any public agency. And many of those aren't even metering the wells. They just use what they need. And that's how the water comes up. So we have to estimate the pumping there. The reason we're looking at the quantity pumped is basically the default approach we have is to continue the existing rate structure, which relies on how many acre feet of groundwater is pumped basin wide. So that's kind of our default, but we're also looking at other options as we go through. So we're not totally married to that yet. So that's why we're trying to gather the data on this. The next slide shows us a pie chart of how the usage breaks down by category. The 2 blue sections, the large public and the small public, those are the public water systems, and they account for a little over a quarter of the water pumped. Agriculture is the big area, and combined with turf irrigation, those 2 green sections account for more than 40% of the water pumped in the area. And rural residential, even though we're assigning just a small amount to each residence, there are a lot of those out there, and cumulatively, they make up nearly a quarter of all the water pumped. And you can see the commercial and the urban irrigation make up some smaller slices of the pie. So that's how those rate categories break down as far as our current estimate of water pumped. With the next click, we'll kind of break this pie into 2 more sections. The 2 public water systems, which make up about a quarter of all water pumped, is metered. So we know what those numbers are. But the other 3/4 of the pumped water we have to estimate. And we can talk about how we do that on the next slide. So the pumping estimate is broken into the first 3 categories are agriculture and other irrigation. We base that on the crop type and the amount of acreage that crop covers. We have data from the state and from other industries that tell us what modern irrigation requirements are for the different types of crops, and we apply that. We also have pretty good data on the acreages for each type of crop throughout the basin. So we can combine those two bits of data and come up with what a crop or type of crop demands for each parcel. The rural residential is a different kind of challenge. We have combined several studies, 4 or 5 different independent studies, as well as confirmed what our findings with local water purveyors on what the average household uses. And those all kind of match up, and they center on an average of ½ acre foot per year. And we'll go a little more into detail on how that's used. The commercial and urban wells vary by land use. The commercial is fairly complex. I'm not going to go into details on that. And the urban wells, we just assign a very small amount, which is 1/10 of an acre foot per urban well, assuming that the house is hooked up to city water. The urban well is probably just used for outside irrigation purposes. So those are some of the assumptions and the data that kind of supports the estimates we have. We'll show you now some examples of that we kind of carved out. For a couple of agricultural examples, we assume a 50 acres of vineyard. We apply the rate of 0.6 feet per year. And let me talk for a moment about what that means. In the Bay Area, we get about 14 to 19 inches of rain per year. So that's how many inches of water fall out of the sky each year. And of course, the crops benefit from that. But for the irrigated crops, they require additional water. So this equates to about 7 more inches of water per year that the average vineyard would need in order to thrive. So that's feet per year. So we apply that against 50 acres, and we come up with 30 acre feet per year for that 50 acres of vineyard. So that's an example of how we apply those rate factors against the acreages of the different crops. Another example is 100 acres of pasture. We apply a very low rate. That's about a ½ inch of water per year to keep a pasture going, which primarily is for what livestock might be on the pasture. It's a very small amount. So multiply those out, you get 4 acre feet to cover 100 acres of pasture. If you do 100 acres of grain, that's assumed to be dry farming in this county. So we assign 0 acre feet for all grain crops. And the rural residential, as I mentioned, we assume is 0.5 acre feet per year. That's what the average comes out to for the various studies we've looked at. That converts to about 446 gallons per day for the average use, and the per capita use can be anywhere from 100 to 130 gallons per day on average for the per capita, plus a little bit more for some outside irrigation. So that's how the rural residential works. One last bullet point on this slide is we do have pretty good data on how much surface water or recycled water various properties get delivered to their property. So we will credit those crop demands or other demands against any surface or recycled water that comes in. And there are over 100 parcels that actually get zeroed out completely due to taking deliveries of surface or recycled water. So they may have not some crops that require water, but they're getting enough through these other sources. So there is a credit built into this rate structure for those alternate sources of water. On the next slide, we see the actual numbers. These correlate to the pie chart you saw earlier. A large system, small system going down through that chart. And at the bottom, you see the offsets for alternate sources. So that's applied to agriculture or turf irrigation numbers. We don't apply those at this point to residential use or commercial use. And we think we're in the ballpark of 18,000 to 22,000 acre feet per year, probably a little on the higher end of that, we believe at this point. We're still fiddling with some of the data factors here and some of the individual data for individual parcels to make sure we get that as close as we can. So that's the data where we're at this point in time. Before I go on to budget, I just want to say something about pumping estimates. We are not charging people for the water that they pump. We're trying to spread the cost of this agency around to all the people who benefit from the work that this agency is going to be doing. And we need to do that by law in a fair and representative manner so that the amount you're charged in any fee for doing this work is proportionate or bears a resemblance to the amount of benefits you get. So we're using the estimated water pumped as a way to gauge what your fair share of these costs are. So I know it sounds like we're charging for the water you're pumping, but that's still your water coming up out of your well. We're just using it as a basis for spreading the cost in as fair a manner as we know how. There's a couple ways to do that, and we'll get to that in a minute. On the next slide, we're going to revisit the budget. You'll see in the white column the total costs on those different budget categories totaling a little over $1 million per year. But we talked a little bit about grants up front, and obviously if we can get grants to help fund this, it's less we have to charge to the well users or the residents in the district. So what we've done is kind of split that budget into two categories: the amount that could be eligible for grants, and then the amount that's left over. So if you click the next click, you'll see the two numbers circled at the bottom are the 1 million is one of the bases that we would use for fees. And the next one would be the 736,000 if we can get grants. Just a note on grants is there is not a grant application cycle open at this point. Marcus can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it will open up later this year for the next round of grants. And we will certainly be applying for that. So this amounts you see in the green column are just estimated at this point. Any actual funding is not known at this time. So there's these are aspirational numbers, but we have used the two numbers, the million and the 736,000 as the basis for calculating some example fees going forward. So the next slide shows us the basic calculation. We've got the amount of acre feet we think that's pumped basin wide and the amount of cost that would need to be spread to all the different beneficiaries of the groundwater. So we've calculated two calculations. If you get grant funding, you only need to raise enough revenue for the $736,000 divided by an estimated 21,500 acre feet gives you $35 per acre. And conversely, the $1 million budget equates to about a $50 per acre foot. We'll use that per acre foot a couple different ways as we go forward. So I think the next slide, let's see. Yes, the next slide will take us into some options. We have two families of options, option A and option B. This family would be fees that would be spread to the 9,000 or so parcels that rely directly on well water. So it's a little bit smaller universe than the whole basin, but these are the direct recipients of well water. The regulatory fees you see here are exactly like the ones that are in place now. It's just basically at a higher rate. Of course, we have updated the data to some extent, so some of those may change a little bit just from the data, but the structure is exactly like what's in place that was put in place in 2019. It's proportionate to the quantity we believe you're pumping, and it also includes credit for any recycled or surface water coming in. The people who would pay will be all the pumpers, the cities, the water districts, farmers, and so on. On the downside, these numbers are higher than were adopted back in 2019, primarily because the budget is a lot more now that we're entering the implementation phase of the GSP, the plan. And another on the downside is that private pumping is not metered, so we have to estimate that. But again, I'll reiterate, we're not charging for the actual amount pumped, we're just trying to use that number as a way to fairly distribute the costs. You see over there, the current rate is $19.90, but we're looking at rates for anywhere from $35 to $50 per acre foot. If you click forward, we will get some examples of that. These are the same examples. The 50-acre vineyard would be paying anywhere from $1,050 up to about $1,500 per year on a 50-acre vineyard. The 100-acre pasture would be a lot lower because it doesn't use much water. It's in the $140 to $200 range. And the rural residents, as we stated before, would be in the $18 to $25 range, depending on which of those budget numbers we have to fund. The next example down below is another way we could spread the costs. These are what we've called wellhead fees. It's basically a flat fee to every parcel that relies on well water. So it does not take into account how much water you pump. This would be just the cost divided across the 9,000 or so parcels. And that would range from between $75 and $115. It's not particularly fair because it's disproportionate to the quantity pumped. the 50-acre vineyard would pay as much as a rural residence under this scheme. So that is an option out there, but obviously it may not be attractive to most people. One more click is going to bring us to one thing I want to bring up. This is not an option that we're considering for consideration at this point, but it is out there. This is contained in the SGMA law, and these are state intervention fees. If this agency is unable to meet the requirements of SGMA, if it cannot meet its goals in the plan that is submitted, or if the plan it's submitted is not acceptable to the state and it can't correct that, the state could come in and intervene in the management of this basin and take it over. And they bring with them fees that are put into law, and that's a fee of $300 per well plus $40 per acre. So they would basically be charging both of the fees that I showed you just above in this table. In addition to that, they would have another $100 per well for de minimis users like rural residential and other small users. They would also require the agency to get back on its feet and take back over the management of this and do it in a successful way. And you would ultimately get back to the same spot you're in now. So the state intervention is not an off-ramp. It's just a giant speed bump in the road that you are required to, that this agency is required to follow going forward. On the next slide, we look at option B. And option B are taxes or assessments that would be applied to all 80,000 or so parcels in the basin. The idea is you spread the peanut butter thinner. It's a lot less for each individual to deal with. The first option is a parcel tax. I think we're all familiar with parcel taxes. We have government agencies asking to pass those all the time. They do require voter approval, and it's a 2/3 supermajority that's required to approve any such parcel tax. In addition to that, on the downside, it can't be implemented soon enough to catch this next fiscal year. I think the earliest election that we could consider getting this on would be the November election. And if it were to pass, you wouldn't be able to implement it until the following fiscal year. So we'd lose 1 year of revenues. In addition, the county elections office would charge the agency upwards of $200,000 to even put it on the ballot. That's a cost that's not currently in the budget. On the upside, it is a lot lower rates than what we saw in the other options. And this is a per parcel basis. So this would not necessarily be tied to how much water you use, or even if you have a well. This would just be paid for all the taxpayers in the district. The next option, here's some examples. Well, there's no examples on that because everyone would pay the same. The other option is a benefit assessment. This is an interesting funding mechanism. A lot of you may be paying for benefit assessments for street lighting or landscaping or mosquito abatement, something like that. Oftentimes they're found on the bottom part of your tax bill. So a benefit assessment is something that might fit here. It does have some challenges, but what it also does is it does lower the rate to about half of what it was for the regulatory fee we saw earlier, the $15 to $25 per acre foot. There is a proportionality requirement in law for benefit assessment. So the per acre foot approach is probably the most fairest way to achieve that proportionality. This also requires voter approval, although it's not a registered voter election that you would see in your November packet. This would be a landowner mail-in ballot election. It requires 50% to have it approved. It also has a high cost to implement, upwards of $150,000. Again, not currently in the budget. And again, probably would not get approved this year. It would be a year delayed. So either one of these two options would take an extra year to implement, has a high risk of not being approved by the voters, and you would have to come up with some sort of interim funding plan for the year that you're waiting for the results on this. One last note on the benefit assessment, it's still under legal review. There's a lot of legal quirks with benefit assessments, and we have to make sure that we can comply with those and before we can give this any further serious consideration. One more click and we'll show some examples of what the 50-acre vineyard would be in the $450 to $750 per year range. The 100-acre pasture would be down in the $60 to $100 range. And the rural residential would be about half what we saw earlier, $8 to $13. So that's a summation of the different options we have and the different rates we'd be looking at if we were to spread these costs across the well owners or the entire basin. On the next slide, we'll kind of go through the process that we have ahead of us. This is the next 5 months of life here in the project that we're involved in. March and April is devoted to community meetings. This is the first of 4 in this basin. We also have the advisory committee. That's what the AC stands for. We're working with staff and a liaison group as well. In April, we'll be back to the board to report back what we hear tonight, to give them an update on our data and our fee report as we're finishing up those. And then we'll be doing more community meetings in April and on into May, maybe not in this basin, but in the other basins. May would also be another board meeting. Hopefully at that point, we'll have some final rates for them to approve and then set in motion a public hearing, which would happen in June. Possibly a first reading of an ordinance adopted in May and a second reading in June for the final board adoption, if we can keep to this timeline. Our goal is to have this all put in place by July 1st when the fiscal year starts. And there's also an August deadline to get any charges like this that we want to put on the tax bill. All that data and information has to be into the county tax office by the first week of August. So that's the goal for getting revenue in for the next fiscal year. And that's our layout of our next steps. On the next meeting is a summary of the upcoming meetings. As I said, we've got meetings 2, 3, and 4 coming up in the next month. Before that, we'll be at the board on April 14th, back to the advisory committee on May 9th, and then the last 2 board meetings in May and June. The next slide just sort of sums up what you heard tonight from Marcus and myself. The 2014 SGMA Act forces us to form the local agencies. It defines sustainability and to help us develop our plan, and then required to achieve sustainability by implementing the plan. That's a summation of the GSP in a nutshell. Implementing sustainability takes implementing projects and actions, closing the data gaps, a lot of monitoring and reporting, as well as communicating with the community like we're doing tonight. And then we have to update the model. And then at the end of the 5 years, we need to update the plan and submit an updated plan at the 5-year mark. The funding options, again, charge groundwater users their fair share of these costs, or charge everyone in the basin, although each one of those options require ballot measure and voter approval. And the rates, as we just saw, would range in the current structure from $35 to $50 per acre foot per year, which equates to $18 to $25 per residence. The wellhead fee, a flat fee of $75 to $115. The parcel tax a little lower at $8 to $14, and a benefit assessment in the $15 to $25 per year range. So that's a summation of some of the information we've thrown out tonight. I know it's a lot to chew on. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Sam as we go to the next slide and go from there. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Jerry. I know you touched on some of this throughout your presentation, but I still see a number of questions rolling in along similar lines. I wonder if you can just explain again quickly what the fees will pay for, and again, just kind of reiterate whether state support for GSA activities is expected.
Okay, well, you saw the budget breakdown that and all the actions and projects, as well as the administrative tasks that are required in SGMA. These funds would be used to pay for managing this GSA and implementing the plan as we go forward. And these rates we're talking about would be endure for a 5-year period, at which point they would have to be reevaluated, look at your new 5-year look ahead on the next budget round and see where the fees go. You'll know a lot more by then, by the way. In the next 2 years, you'll know what the state thinks about our plan. We'll know where the grant situation is, if we're going to get grant funding to help offset some of the rates and bring them down to the lower levels we talked about. So it's all the management actions, data gap filling, updating the model, and just making this a smarter system, work better, and start implementing some of the actions and projects.
Great, thank you. And for those that are attending, I did post a link to the GSA's Groundwater Sustainability Plan in the chat. For more information on some of those projects and management actions, you're welcome to take a look at that at the link provided in the chat. I believe you already covered this as well, but hoping you can restate it a little bit. Will fees be charged at a higher or lower rate depending on how much water is used and what type of user it is, i.e., vineyard, commercial, residential, etc.?
Well, yes and no. We've been talking about I'll go back to the regulatory fee because that's probably the most solid approach going forward. It may be where we end up. And the charge is per acre foot. So we don't discriminate between a residence, a winery, or croplands. It's per acre foot. Now those uses will discriminate how much water we estimate that you're using. So the amount you pay will vary by land use, but the rate, the dollars per acre foot would be the same across the board. That's how we achieve the proportionality and the fairness that's required in state law.
Great, thank you, Jerry. This is more a question for staff in general. I know that Marcus and others answered a couple of the questions, but I still continue to see a number of questions about cannabis production. In general, I see them being summed up as how will the GSA and GSP address cannabis water use, and will growers be charged at the same rate as other users? So very similar question to, will they be charged more for water use, but just wanted to.
Yes, they are. In fact, the application rate for cannabis, we have two rates, one for indoor grows and one for outdoor grows. They are the highest rates of all the different uses we have out there. So those are factored into our data.
Thank you. Marcus, I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add to that.
I was just going to add that most the cannabis projects that are permitted through the county are required to measure and report their water usage. So we're working. The GSA is working closely with Permit Sonoma to integrate those reported numbers into the total extraction numbers, and they would be charged on their actual usage.
Great, thank you. You answered some of these in the Q&A as well, but while we've got you, Marcus, there were a number of questions regarding surface water releases and diversions from various dams. Does the GSA have authority under SGMA to regulate surface water supplies?
No, the SGMA is very clear that the GSAs do not have authority to regulate surface water rights, and so that's something that is one of the areas of coordination that's going to be required as the GSA looks to improve its information and manage surface water depletion from groundwater pumping, is to work closely with the State Water Resources Control Board, which does have the authority to manage water rights, to determine how to handle those situations.
Thank you. Another question for Jerry. Are water districts and urban users within the basin charged at the same rate as rural residential?
Yes, they are. It goes back to that same principle I talked about earlier, and we do have those actual numbers from the State Division of Drinking Water, so they would be charged at the same rate.
Great, thank you. Another question, a few of them popped up. Will you only be charged by the Santa Rosa Plain GSA if you live or pump within the Santa Rosa Plain Basin?
Yes, that is correct. We have the boundaries fairly well delineated, so wells that are just outside the boundary or further will not be charged.
All right. There continue to be a number of questions about cannabis and food production. I invite staff to take a look at those. I see Marcus answering some of those questions. Again, those answered questions show up in the answered tab under Q&A. But I'll just do another scan to see if there are any common questions. We did receive several about Spanish language translation for future meetings, and whether that's something that's being considered, and Sonoma Water confirmed that yes, that will definitely be considered for future meetings. All right. I encourage staff to continue to look at the questions and answers. That does sum up a number of the very common themes that have popped up. But I just wanted to go back to the next step slide and that listed those future community meetings. We could pull that up again. So one of the questions that popped up, will these meetings be in person? You can see that the next meeting scheduled for Wednesday, April 20th at 5:30 is going to be held at Roanoke Park City Hall. There's another one on Tuesday, April 26th at 5:30 at the Windsor Community Center. And finally, on April 27th in Santa Rosa. The location is posted on the website, but we still haven't nailed that down. For staff, and maybe Ann, you can answer this, is there a discussion of conducting these in kind of a hybrid format as you know the situation with the pandemic continues to evolve?
We're considering it. It really depends on the location. Some of the locations, the hybrid can work, and other locations it's really challenging. And so the current thought right now is that the upcoming community meetings will be live and not hybrid, but we are looking at the technology available.
Great, thank you. That technology is a limitation for hybrid meetings, but as you can see, all three of those opportunities listed on your screen are an opportunity to ask questions and be heard in person. One additional question, in the outreach materials, are those translated into Spanish? The user also asks about indigenous languages that farm workers may speak, but do the outreach materials currently include Spanish translation?
Some of them do, and the others are being translated into Spanish.
All right. I'll note a couple of you mentioned that you haven't seen an answer to your question in the Q&A tabs. So we've tried to continuously respond to common themes and questions verbally. And those individual kind of one-off questions we've tried to answer directly in the tab, but everything is being captured. Let's see, an additional question. If folks have additional questions, can they be emailed to staff?
The GSA website has a question button where you can send questions, and so yes, you can send your questions through that button to staff, and we will respond. We may not be able to do it immediately, but we'll respond within a couple of days.
Great, thank you, Ann. And I just note at the bottom of the slides, you see the GSA's website there, Santa Rosa Plain Groundwater.org, and we'll drop that into the chat as well, so you can click on it directly. Okay. All right. Well, we are quite a bit ahead of schedule here. I'd certainly welcome people to continue submitting questions. We're answering them as quickly as possible, either verbally or through the Q&A function. I do see a pitch there to try and do hybrid meetings. And if not hybrid, there's a suggestion that they be recorded and available to see via Facebook. That's a great suggestion. Thank you. I'm just pausing for a moment as more questions come in. There have been a number of questions throughout the day about incentives and projects management actions to provide incentives to rural residential landowners for things like recharge. Marcus, can you speak to that concept at all?
Yeah, should the GSA board select, a regulatory fee that does rely on estimated or metered groundwater extraction, credits are something that could be considered by the GSA board to be integrated into that program. There are examples of that being done in the other areas of the state. I actually responded to a similar question in the chat and put a link to a pilot project that's being conducted on the Central Coast down in the Pajaro Valley, where groundwater users, farmers are building and maintaining recharge ponds, and their recharge is measured and monitored, and they get a credit from the amount of money that's charged to them by that particular agency. So there's examples of that the GSA could consider, and the GSP, the Groundwater Sustainability Plan, does include projects, recharge projects that could be done to benefit the basin, and in coordination with landowners. So that is something that could be developed. There are obviously a lot of things that would need to be sorted out for that, and the GSA would need to make sure that there's an actual benefit to the basin as part of those projects. But definitely something that there's a lot of interest in, and some examples throughout the state that the GSA could look towards.
One question: who is getting the fee? So the Santa Rosa Plain Groundwater Sustainability Agency would be receiving those fees. I'd certainly invite staff to provide any additional information on the question you see right at the bottom there. I've seen several questions about the number of people living in a particular residence or on a parcel. It's my understanding, based on the presentation, that the money is being charged on a per parcel, or the fee is charged on a per parcel basis, not on the number of occupants on that land. But Jerry and Marcus, please do weigh in if I'm not correct there.
Yeah, the fee, the current assumptions are based on a per parcel basis, but I would add that it's based on the assessor, the county assessor's office, use code designation for each parcel. And so for parcels where there's multiple residents, multiple residences are indicated, there is the amount of fee that does increase based on the number of dwelling units and residences on a single parcel, based on this assessor's use code.
Thank you. All right. There are also a variety of questions about the structure of the GSA board itself. I know this gets us a little bit away from the rate and fee study questions, but I'm wondering if you can provide some input just on how the GSA board of directors board was selected, and whether the GSA is a local, state, or federal agency.
Andy, would you like me to answer that, or do you want to answer that?
Go ahead, Ann.
Okay, so the GSA is, it's actually a joint powers authority. So it's a kind of an agency of agencies, which sounds very bureaucratic, but it was probably one of the lowest cost, least legally complicated ways of creating the Groundwater Sustainability Agency. And it is a local agency. The state requires that groundwater be managed at the local level, and required the creation of this new agency. So the board includes representatives from each member agency, which are all the cities, the town of Windsor, the county, Sonoma Water, and independent water suppliers. These are all the agencies and the resource conservation districts. Together, these agencies contributed funding to pay the costs for the first couple of years of the agency operation. So they all have one representative on the board of directors. And some of those representatives are elected officials, like Councilmember Schwedhelm, who right now chairs the GSA and is the representative from the city of Santa Rosa. Others are appointed, like the representatives from the 2 resource conservation districts. So it's kind of a hybrid group.
Thank you, Ann. There is, I think, a very good question here. We've both Marcus and Jerry have spoken to this a number of times throughout the presentation. But if it's possible, it'd be great to sum up what you mean by the GSA will manage groundwater supplies. What does that manage refer to? And I know you already spoke to this, but maybe you can just give a quick recap if possible.
Marcus, I'll leave that to you, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty broad term, but essentially it's what the Groundwater Sustainability Plan describes. And in that plan, section 4 describes the thresholds and objectives that are set for all those sustainability indicators that I mentioned, and the GSA is required to not exceed those minimum thresholds that are set. And so the plan includes projects and actions to either increase supplies or reduce demands within the basin through those projects and management actions that I highlighted in the presentation that I gave, as well as monitoring for all those different indicators and thresholds and objectives, just kind of broadly speaking. And the website, GSA's website does include a lot of information on the plans. The implementation plan for the GSP is a good place to look for what the GSA's plans are for at least the next 5 years going forward.
I'm just scanning the remaining questions. This particular question, I think, touches on a number that have been asked. It also came up in the GSA's advisory committee. User asks, I currently pay an annual fee to the City of Santa Rosa Water Agency for having a residential well. Is there any interaction between the GSA and the City of Santa Rosa? If so, how do they work together?
Hi, I'm Jennifer Burke. I'm the director of the water department for the city of Santa Rosa. For Santa Rosa, we actually don't charge for having a groundwater well. What we do charge for is for having a backflow device. So if you have an alternate water supply on your property, which a well would be, we have to make sure that the public water system is protected. And by state law, we are required to ensure that there's a backflow device on your property downside of the meter, so that should a drop in pressure ever occur, we wouldn't have any type of contamination come into our system. So that fee is specifically for the administration of the backflow device and testing that needs to occur on an annual basis.
Jennifer, while we've got you, the user also asked just about coordination between the GSA and City of Santa Rosa. Can you speak to some of those mechanisms at all and how you kind of interact together?
Sure. Just like the other cities and member agencies, Santa Rosa is a member agency of the GSA, and our city council member, Tom Schwedhelm, is our representative. He is also the chair of the GSA. We participate on the advisory committee, and we also share information and resources with the GSA and provide any information we have on our water use and water supply planning to the GSA. So we are constantly coordinating not only with the GSA, but also with Sonoma Water as one of their, actually as their biggest water purchaser. So we're their biggest water retailer for Sonoma Water. So we're constantly coordinating and working together. on balancing all the water supply portfolio within Sonoma County.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer. There have been a few questions about the boundaries for the GSA. I'm wondering, I know that was included in one of the previous slides, and I'm just wondering if it'd be possible to pull up the map again. The basin map. Thank you. It'll take just a second to run back to it. Yep. So you can see the area outlined in the blue dashed line is the Santa Rosa Plain Groundwater subbasin. Andy, go ahead.
Sam, I just wanted to add, so I'm Andy Rogers, and the administrator for the Santa Rosa Plain Groundwater Sustainability Agency. And just relative to this, on our website at santarosaplaingroundwater.org, there is in the header a button for the Groundwater User Information Data Exchange Guide. And if you go there, there's actually an interactive map where you can see specifically where your parcel is, either by address or APN. And then you'll see exactly if you are in or out of the groundwater basin. So sometimes it's hard to see on this kind of scale, but you can get down to the detail on the map that's posted. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. All right, the questions are beginning to slow a little bit. I certainly welcome staff to review any of the ones that are coming in and respond. As I've mentioned, all of your input is being recorded and will be captured for the record. And as Chair Schwedhelm mentioned at the outset, the GSA will take a look at all of the input at its next meeting as well.
Sam, there's several questions on kind of the future of the tax or fee. So just to be clear, what Jerry was talking about is a fee, not a parcel tax, which is different. But in the fee, the GSA board would be reviewing that fee and determining when and if that fee would be changed. So there's several questions along those lines. And I think it's probably been answered once before, but I've seen a few new ones come in. So just to make sure that people do understand that the GSA board would have the authority to keep the fee the same, to lower it, to raise it, depending on the basin conditions and what kind of projects or programs might need to be implemented.
Thank you, Ann. That's great. Jerry, you had mentioned it in one of your slides, I believe, but can you give an estimate of when a fee structure might be implemented?
Yeah, it's our goal to implement it as of July 1st. However, most of these will be put onto the property tax bill, so the average property owner won't see that until they get their tax bills in October or November. That would be for the full fiscal year, typically paid in 2 installments with your property taxes.
So this would be an annual fee.
It's an annual fee, and using a property tax bill, it comes in that lump sum with your property taxes.
Right. Let's see, was frost protection included in the estimate for vineyard water use? I don't know if you have that level of detail.
Yeah, I don't have any specific information on that. I don't know if Marcus, that was factored in on your end at all.
The irrigation rate that's included for vineyards of 0.6 acre feet per year does not directly incorporate frost protection, but it is considered in kind of an average rate across all vineyards throughout the 3 basins. There are obviously some vineyards that use a lot less than that, and some vineyards that may use a lot more. So in that way, the variety is included in that average, but frost protection is not explicitly calculated or incorporated into that number.
Thank you, Marcus. Will we be getting a statement to let us know what we will be paying before our property tax bill comes, so we can appeal the fee? So essentially, will a statement be issued that includes any potential fee?
Marcus, would the guide program be able to furnish that data if they were to go on to that application?
Yeah, that is the mechanism for sharing that information with groundwater users. That's the program that Andy Rogers described, and I believe the idea is to have that information up, before the fees would be levied, and there's an opportunity on there through filling out a survey to provide additional or corrected information to the GSA.
If I could add, this is Andy Rogers. Also, when we have the future meetings that I think Jerry laid out, we'll have, certainly those are public meetings where these things will be prominently shared. And there will be then a notice in the paper about where this information is. And so there'll be lots of notification that happens if this were to go forward.
In the current fee structure that was implemented in 2019, was there kind of a dispute process or included in that, or because it was paid by the local agencies, was that not included?
I'll take a first crack at that, but there is an appeals process that was included in with the 2019 fee that was passed.
Thank you. And the last question that I'm seeing on here, Jerry, I think you covered in one of your slides, but what portion of the fee, or I guess you could say the total budget, goes towards mitigation of our groundwater shortfall, or I'm going to interpret that as direct actions to address groundwater issues?
That's a good question. Marcus, I think we could probably look at the total budget, right? And kind of glean from that. I mean, to some extent, all of the costs would go towards this. Some are a little more administrative, some are pointed more towards actual management actions and projects. But all of it is in support of that same goal, which is to help stabilize the groundwater at some point. Marcus, does that sound like a reasonable answer? Or?
Yeah, that's correct. And I would add that, if you're looking for, what specific component of the budget is initially projected to go towards projects and actions, that's if you go back to some of those slides, it's about 100,000 of the $1 million budget roughly, and that's primarily to start planning and assessing the feasibility of some of these projects that are needed. As Jerry mentioned, other components of the budget, filling data gaps, are also intended to inform the implementation of projects and where they're they may be needed in the future. So it's not just that projects and actions budget category. And then I'd also kind of refer back to, the funding that's coming in from other sources, like the grant that Sonoma Water received to advance aquifer storage and recovery in this basin is not, paid for at all by the Groundwater Sustainability Agency, but is going to be benefiting the agency. So there's projects and actions that other entities and other agencies are doing and will continue to be doing that will also be contributing to the projects that are contemplated in the GSP and intended to benefit the basin.
Sam, I would add that there was a question early in the meeting about how we stack up against other GSAs around the state. Marcus mentioned that the direct budget for management actions and projects is not a large portion of this $1 million budget. But in a way, that's good news, because when you look at some GSAs that are actually doing a lot of brick and mortar projects, injection wells, settling basins, other things to try and recharge the aquifer, that percentage of the cost is much higher. But those basins are also paying hundreds of dollars per acre foot. I've seen a couple that are over $1,000 per acre foot in order to build these massive projects. Luckily, you're in a basin that doesn't require as much in the way of projects, so it winds up being a smaller percentage of the budget. For the administration and running of the GSA, the costs you see here are very similar to costs through GSAs throughout the state. We see that same level of $500,000 to a little more just for the basic operating the GSA, managing the data, and getting the plan produced. So that's on par with everyone else. Where it differs widely is the actual what sustainability looks like and what it takes to get there. And we're fortunate here in the Santa Rosa Plain that is a fairly small part of what we have ahead of us.
Thank you, Jerry. And sort of following on that line of questioning, one of the users asks if you could provide an example of what a project and management action would be, and what potential expected benefits might be.
Yeah, examples of the projects and management actions include both those, supply side projects such as aquifer storage and recovery, or stormwater recharge. Is taking advantage of wintertime water when it's available and doing projects to put it in the ground to recharge the basin above what would normally be recharged naturally. And types of management actions could include voluntary conservation. There could also be in the future, mandatory requirements for conservation depending upon, how the basin responds. That's something that is considered in other basins. Other basins that have more challenges and are already pumping more than their basin naturally replenishes, or considering projects like water markets and trading, giving everybody allocations and the ability to use a water market to reduce demands. That's not something that's currently contemplated here, but it is something that should conditions in the future worsen, that could be considered by the GSA, and there will be lots of other basins, particularly in the Central Valley of the state, that will provide examples of how those types of programs may work.
Great, thank you, Marcus. All right, at this point, wondering if we can pull up the slide again that has those next opportunities for community engagement. Fast forward to those. Thank you. All right. So I just wanted to highlight again, this next series of upcoming community meetings, additional opportunities for you to provide your input. As Ann mentioned as well, if you go to santarosaplaingroundwater.org, you can submit additional questions there. The questions that were received as well as the answers will be posted to that website. But seeing that questions are starting to slow down, let me just make one final check and see if there are any additions. One question from Rue Furch, who's also one of our advisory committee members. How is land use regulation contemplated to coordinate with groundwater sustainability? So a question kind of about the coordination between land use regulating agencies and the GSA or implementation of the GSP.
Yeah, so SGMA does require coordination between the GSAs and land use agencies. It is important to remember that SGMA does not provide the GSA with land use authorities. Those do remain with the cities and counties. But the GSAs are required to share information, and the counties and cities are required to utilize that information in their planning, general plans and things like that. The GSP for the Santa Rosa Plain does include coordination with land use agencies in its actions, and some of those potential policy options are ones that would be developed, in close coordination with land use agencies, including the county, which also the county also retains its well permitting authority. And so, one of those grants that the GSA received that have totaled $2 million over the past 4 years includes a project that's being worked on by Permit Sonoma to better manage the groundwater related data that it receives and compiles, and set up information sharing databases for the county to share that information with the GSAs. They've also been working on streamlining their well permitting process and adding additional information that's required for well permits that'll benefit the GSA. So there's definitely boundaries between the land use agencies and the GSA, but there is requirements for coordination, and there's lots of opportunities that we've already started taking advantage of to make that coordination happen and streamline some of those processes.
And Marcus, it may be worth noting that those land use agencies are actually members of this GSA. So there is some direct linkage there. The GSA will be heard.
Great. Glad you added that.
All right. I know that several questions along this line have been answered in the Q&A featured by staff, but questions continue to come in about discounts for existing, water systems such as gray water systems, or other conservation measures. Has the GSA considered any type of discount or incentive for those type of systems?
We haven't at that point. I think that's something to look into as we go through the next 5 years and update all the policies and procedures. That's definitely something that should be looked at. I think there's a general consensus that lowering your rates can be an incentive towards conservation, which is obviously one of the stated goals here. So I think to look for mechanisms to do that. Unfortunately, the data we don't have metering data. It's just not within reach at this point. We have to make some assumptions, and it flattens things out a lot. We acknowledge that it's not a perfect system, but I think it's the best we have at this point. And I think that's definitely something that can be looked at in the coming cycles.
Thank you. All right. I'm seeing questions slow down quite a bit. At this point, I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to Chair Schwedhelm for closing remarks and next steps. With that, hand it over to Tom.
Thank you, Sam. Really want to thank everyone for attending this meeting. And I know it's the first meeting I've had where we've had over 200 different questions being asked. And I also recognize that I get the sense in looking at some of those comments that not everyone heard what they wanted to hear. But I just want to share, my perspective, how I became onto this board. I was elected to the council in 2014, and shortly thereafter, the mayor appointed me to be on our Water Advisory Council. Big learning curve because I had no experience with water, but due to the subject matter expertise in Sonoma Water, Santa Rosa Water, and now with our GSA administrator, these are the subject matter experts that have really educated me about water. And I don't know all the technical terms like Marcus or Jay or Jennifer or anyone else that you've heard from tonight. But every time I've asked a question, many of which has been asked tonight, staff has come back with the answer and explaining why, from my layperson's perspective, we're going in the direction that we're going. So I just hope that you continue to remain involved, because again, SGMA was not the idea of the Sonoma or Santa Rosa or Sonoma County. It was a law that was passed by the state legislature. And again, I said in my opening comments, it's a statewide framework to help protect groundwater resources over the long term. That's what the goal is, no more, no less. How we do that, that's what we're learning. We just submitted last year our Groundwater Sustainability Plan. The Department of Water Resources in Sacramento has 2 years to approve it. And so we're learning as we go. And the feedback for this fee study is very much appreciated. And we will be discussing that at our next Groundwater Sustainability Agency board meeting on April 14th. You're invited to attend because we as a board will be having a lot of these comments as part of our discussions. Additionally, if you're interested in reading the Groundwater Sustainability Plan that's been submitted to the state, it's hundreds of pages long, but all of that information is there on our website. And it's been, Sam had mentioned where it was on a lot of those different slides. So I really encourage you, if you're interested in learning more information, go to that source, because that's what I've been doing. Try to find the information and then confirm it with some of the subject matter experts you've heard from tonight. So again, we look forward to seeing you in person at one of the 3 meetings that will be held in late April. I think the Santa Rosa Plain will be on April 27th at a site to be determined. And I really appreciate your attendance. And Sam, any other final comments?
No, with that, I'd just like to echo Chair Schwedhelm's comments. Thank you all for attending. This is not the last opportunity to hear from all of you, and we really encourage you to stay engaged. With that, we'll go ahead and close out the meeting for the evening. And again, thank you all very much for attending.